The wedding livestream scandal. 1. The morning of Evelyn Harper's wedding began with lilies, white, abundant, arranged in towering glass vases that crowded every available surface of the bridal suite at the Aurora Conservatory. Their scent was lush and cloying, a sweetness that seemed to thicken the air and settle along the back of her throat. Through the curved glass walls, the gardens shimmered in pale autumn light, rows of white chairs aligned on the lawn, satin ribbons lifting gently in the breeze. Beyond them, the river caught the sun in fractured silver flashes. Evelyn stood barefoot on polished marble and regarded herself in the mirror, as if the woman reflected there were someone she might need to introduce herself to. The gown was exactly as she had envisioned months ago, ivory satin fitted close at the waist, delicate beading that caught the light in restrained glimmers, the skirt cascading in smooth folds to the floor. Her hair fell in soft waves pinned back with pearl combs, and her makeup had been applied with such careful precision that not a single detail appeared out of place. She looked serene, luminous, composed. The phone resting on the vanity buzzed against the glass. The vibration made a faint skittering sound. The makeup artist, a calm woman with steady hands and an eye for symmetry, leaned in to perfect the edge of Evelyn's eyeliner. "Hold still," she murmured, satisfied with her own work. "You're glowing." The phone buzzed again. Evelyn ignored it at first, telling herself it would be another congratulatory message, another last-minute reassurance from a relative or a bridesmaid. She had received dozens since dawn, little bursts of joy that blinked across her screen like confetti. The third vibration, however, carried a different weight. It seemed to hum directly into her ribs. The makeup artist stepped back. 5 minutes, she said with a gentle smile. "Then it's time." Evelyn nodded, but her hand had already moved toward the phone. The notification at the top of her screen bore no familiar name, only the discreet icon of the page she ran in secret, Vows and Lies. For nearly 2 years, she had managed it quietly, an anonymous archive of evidence submitted by strangers who had discovered betrayal in their own lives. She never editorialized. She never embellished. She posted the proof exactly as she received it, screenshots and hotel invoices and voice recordings arranged in clean, undeniable sequences. The page had grown steadily, drawing followers who appreciated its restraint and its clarity. Her pulse shifted as she opened the message. A single line appeared first. "You deserve to see this before you walk down the aisle." Below it was a folder icon. Evelyn's thumb hesitated only for a fraction of a second before she tapped it open. The first image expanded across her screen. A hotel lobby bathed in warm gold light, polished marble floors gleaming beneath chandeliers. A man in a charcoal suit stood near the check-in desk, his hand resting low against a woman's back. The angle of his shoulders, the familiar slope of his neck, struck her immediately. Daniel Whitmore, her fiancé, her groom. The second image zoomed closer, catching his face turned slightly toward the woman beside him, his mouth curved in that practiced half-smile he wore when charming investors are greeting her father at formal dinners. The woman's profile sharpened into clarity as well, revealing blonde hair swept into a sleek chignon and the unmistakable line of her jaw. Sophie Caldwell, her stepsister. The air in Evelyn's lungs thinned so abruptly she had to steady herself against the vanity. She continued scrolling with deliberate calm, as if she were reviewing an unfamiliar case rather than watching the collapse of her own. Screenshots of messages followed. "She's buried in seating charts. She won't notice. After Saturday, we don't have to sneak around anymore." The marble beneath her bare feet felt suddenly icy, and the lilies' perfume seemed sharper, almost acrid. There were more images. Hotel keycard receipts stamped with dates from 3 nights earlier, a short video clip of a hotel room door closing, voice notes in which Daniel's low laughter spilled through the speaker with careless intimacy. 3 nights ago she had been selecting floral arrangements with Chloe Bennett, her maid of honor, who had clinked champagne glasses with her and teased her about honeymoon plans. Another screenshot surfaced. "Does Chloe suspect anything?" "Chloe won't say a word. She thinks you're the best thing that's ever happened to Evie." Evelyn felt her fingers tighten until her knuckles whitened. Chloe had helped zip her dress that very morning, had adjusted the veil with trembling hands and watery eyes. The cool air from the balcony brushed against Evelyn's skin, yet heat spread across her cheeks and down her throat. A small, brittle laugh escaped her before she could suppress it. It sounded foreign, like a sound made by someone else standing too close. She scrolled through the remainder of the folder, noting the meticulous arrangement of timestamps and metadata. Whoever had compiled this had not rushed. The evidence was thorough and impossible to dismiss. The final message read simply, "I'm sorry it's today. I couldn't wait any longer." Evelyn lowered the phone slowly. In the mirror, she saw her reflection staring back with a placid expression that no longer matched the turmoil spreading beneath her ribs. She imagined walking down the aisle regardless, imagined Daniel's hand enveloping hers while the knowledge burned quietly in her pocket. She imagined speaking vows aloud with the image of hotel receipts flashing behind her eyelids. Her stomach twisted sharply, and her hands began to tremble in a steady, uncontrollable rhythm. When she stepped back inside, the makeup artist glanced up with a polite smile. "Everything all right?" "Yes," Evelyn replied smoothly, though her pulse hammered against her temples. "Perfect." 2. By noon, the Aurora Conservatory gleamed beneath a cloudless sky. Crystal chairs formed immaculate rows across the manicured lawn, and white roses arched overhead in careful symmetry. Guests arrived in tailored suits and pastel dresses, murmuring appreciatively at the elegance of the setting. The projector screen near the reception area stood ready to display a sentimental montage of childhood photographs Daniel's mother had insisted upon. Daniel Whitmore waited at the altar, adjusting his cufflinks with measured composure. He looked exactly as he always did in public, tall, polished, unruffled. He greeted relatives with easy warmth, his smile calibrated to appear affectionate without revealing too much of himself. Sophie arrived with deliberate timing, champagne satin hugging her figure as she crossed the lawn. She kissed their father's cheek and laughed lightly at something he whispered, her gaze flicking briefly toward the balcony doors of the bridal suite. Chloe stood near the aisle clutching her bouquet, scanning the growing crowd with nervous energy. In the back corner, Nathan Cole adjusted his camera equipment. Dressed in black with sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows, he moved with unhurried precision. He had filmed dozens of weddings, capturing tears and toasts and dances beneath twinkling lights. Today, however, his gaze drifted toward the entrance more often than usual, as though he were waiting for something beyond the ceremony itself. When Evelyn emerged, the collective murmur softened. Conversations tapered off. She stepped forward slowly, her veil trailing behind her like a spill of moonlight. Her father offered his arm, and she accepted it with a small nod. "You look beautiful," he whispered, pride warming his voice. She inclined her head but did not trust herself to speak. The music began, a gentle swell of strings that carried across the lawn. She walked steadily down the aisle, her gaze fixed ahead. The lilies, scent intensified as she neared the altar, and Daniel's smile widened when their eyes met. There was relief in his expression, perhaps even triumph. He took her hands. His palms were warm, steady. The officiant began speaking of partnership and trust, his words flowing in practiced cadence. Evelyn's gaze settled on a loose thread near Daniel's collar. She focused on it, tracing its tiny imperfection as if it were an anchor point keeping her upright. "Evelyn," Daniel began warmly when prompted to recite his vows, "from the moment we met," her phone vibrated inside her clutch. The sound seemed louder than it should have been, a low hum beneath his voice. When the officiant turned to her and invited her to speak, she inhaled slowly. Instead of delivering her prepared vows, she shifted her bouquet into one hand and glanced toward the reception area. "Before I say anything," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the lawn, "I prepared something for everyone." A ripple of curiosity passed through the guests. Daniel laughed lightly, assuming playfulness. "Nathan," she called gently, "could we use the projector?" Nathan met her gaze and nodded without hesitation. "Of course." He moved swiftly to connect the cable. When she handed him her phone, their fingers brushed briefly. He did not look startled. His eyes remained steady, attentive. The screen flickered to life. The hotel lobby appeared. Silence fell abruptly, thick as velvet. Daniel's smile faltered. What is that? Someone whispered. The next image sharpened, revealing Sophie's face unmistakably. A sharp gasp rippled through the crowd. Sophie's hand flew to her mouth. That's not, she began, but her voice trailed off. The screenshots filled the screen, stark and undeniable. She won't notice. After Saturday, we don't have to sneak around anymore. Daniel stepped closer to Evelyn, his voice dropping. What are you doing? She did not look at him. A voice note crackled softly through the speakers, Daniel's laughter echoing across the lawn. Phones rose from the audience, recording instinctively. Turn it off, he hissed. Evelyn turned her head slowly. Would you like to explain? She asked, her tone composed. This isn't what it looks like. The timestamps, she replied evenly. Sophie stepped forward, pale. You're misunderstanding. And Chloe? Evelyn asked softly, her gaze shifting. Chloe stood frozen, her bouquet slipping from her grasp and striking the marble walkway with a dull thud. It was one mistake, she stammered. He said it was over. He said you'd forgive him. A murmur surged through the guests. Daniel's face flushed deeply. You're humiliating yourself, he snapped. The words hung between them. Evelyn bent, retrieved her bouquet, and weighed it briefly in her hand. Without ceremony, she swung her arm. The white roses struck Daniel squarely in the chest, petals bursting outward in a flurry. Gasps erupted, followed by startled laughter. Her phone vibrated continuously now as livestream notifications surged. Sophie protested loudly, but her voice was drowned out by whispers and the faint pinging of incoming comments. Daniel glanced wildly at the raised phones around him. Stop recording, he shouted. It's already live, someone called back. Evelyn reached up and removed her veil, the pearl pins scattering across the marble like spilled beads. She handed the veil to the stunned officiant. I won't be needing this, she said calmly. Then she turned and walked down the aisle alone, the sunlight striking her face as she stepped beyond the arch of roses. 3. By evening, the video had reached hundreds of thousands of views. News outlets clipped the footage, and hashtags spread rapidly across social media. Daniel attempted to defend himself through his own livestream, claiming misinterpretation and manipulation, but his arguments dissolved beneath the weight of visible evidence. Sophie appeared briefly beside him, her voice strained as she insisted it had meant nothing. Outside the conservatory, Evelyn sat on the curb overlooking the river, her gown pulled around her like pale water. The pavement was warm beneath her bare feet. She stared at the shifting current below, listening to the distant echo of raised voices inside the building. Footsteps approached. Are you cold? Nathan asked quietly. She looked up. He held out his jacket, which she accepted without hesitation. The fabric smelled faintly of clean cotton and camera equipment. After a long silence, she said, You weren't surprised. No, he admitted. How long? A year, he replied. At first, small discrepancies. Hotel bookings. Calendar overlaps. You investigated my fiancé. I verify details for a living, he said gently. And I recognize the writing patterns on your page. Her breath caught. You knew about Vows and Lies. He nodded. You never change your punctuation. She studied his face. You sent the files. Yes. Why today? His gaze rested on the river. Because you deserved to know before the vows. A memory surfaced of a college media lab, of a quiet classmate adjusting her camera settings with patient hands. Nathan Cole, she murmured. He smiled faintly. You remember. They sat together in silence for a moment, the river reflecting the fading light. I almost married him, she said finally. Nathan's voice was steady. You didn't. Inside, Daniel's voice rose again in frustrated denial. Evelyn glanced at her phone and saw his livestream comments scrolling rapidly. We saw the receipts. Deepfake hotel lobby. Please. A soft laugh escaped her. He's blaming technology, she said. Nathan's mouth curved slightly. Of course he is. She looked at him, her pulse settling into something steadier. Should we post everything? He met her gaze. Do you want to? Yes. They rose and walked back inside together. Nathan reconnected the projector while Evelyn opened the full archive. Hotel invoices and message logs filled the screen once more, eliciting fresh waves of astonishment. Security intervened when Daniel lunged forward, and Evelyn took the microphone. "For clarity," she said evenly, "there will be no wedding today." A cheer erupted from the back of the room. She lowered the microphone and met Nathan's eyes across the chaos. His expression held no triumph, only quiet steadiness. The live stream count climbed higher. Memes formed in real time, and strangers rallied in comment sections. At the center of it all stood Evelyn Harper, veil gone, gown rumpled, phone still warm in her hand. The lilies, scent lingered faintly in the air, but it no longer felt suffocating. The truth had been projected larger than the arch of roses, larger than the ceremony itself. And she had not whispered it. End.